There are moments in life when you meet someone and immediately recognize that you're working towards the same purpose. That was my experience with Shazia Lackey. We first met after I gave an educational presentation to a room full of health practitioners. From that first conversation, it became clear we shared something much deeper than a professional interest in children's health. We shared a philosophy rooted in education over fear, empowerment over dependency. Over the years, Shazia watched the work we were building at Optim8 Health and Wellness. She saw our commitment to thoughtful, individualized care. When she recently called to say she was ready for something different, I already knew the answer. There is a place for you here. Today, I couldn't be more excited to officially welcome Shazia to the Optim8 family. This is much more than adding another provider. It is the beginning of a vision I've carried for nearly 20 years. Throughout my career, one of my greatest passions has been helping parents think differently about childhood health. Our goal is to teach families how to build strong foundations that allow children to flourish. Our hope is that every child who walks through our doors leaves healthier, but also believing their body is capable, resilient, and worthy of trust. This is only the beginning. I'm incredibly grateful she said yes, and I cannot wait for you to meet her. Welcome to the next chapter of Optim8 Health and Wellness. We're just getting started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Health Matters with Laura Kopec, and I'm your host. And today is a really exciting day, and this is a really exciting episode. We're going to talk about what is new and exciting in the world of Optim8 Health and Wellness, but also how to think differently about raising our children and what Optim8 Health and Wellness is going to do about that. So we have the great pleasure today to talk to Shazia Lackey, and we are welcoming her to the Optim8 Health and Wellness family as one of our providers because we are doing the exciting thing of launching a pediatric department. And we have some great things to talk about today, but it is my absolute honor to introduce Shazia Lackey. Hi, Shazia. Welcome.
Hi, Laura. Thank you.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, so I have been married for 20 years. I have two boys. I have a preteen and a teenage son, born and raised in Arlington, and attended the University of Texas at Arlington for both my undergrad and my graduate degree in nursing. I'm a pediatric nurse practitioner. I have worked in pediatrics my entire nursing career. I started out in 2008 in an emergency department at a pediatric hospital and have worked in a variety of pediatric settings. I was a nurse in pediatrics before I was a mom, but definitely after becoming a mom and having worked in different pediatric settings at that point, I really saw that there was a huge gap of misunderstanding and miscommunication when it came to how we care for our children. And so for me, I had a natural birth and had worked really hard to breastfeed my son, but I felt like I kept coming into a lot of obstacles. And then in my professional career, I kept seeing the same problems over and over and over again. And I didn't really see much progress in patients. So for me, to be working in a career at the same time of trying to figure out what it looked like to mother in a world where our pediatric system wasn't making much progress, it really steered me more towards a holistic integrative approach. And in order for me to do that, I advanced my career and I went back to school to become a provider because I was having to work really under that umbrella of medicine and not really able to operate fully under that holistic side of things. And so for me, even though I started out in traditional pediatrics, I've had numerous experiences in pediatrics that has all led me to a more integrative holistic approach as a pediatric nurse practitioner. And I've been seeing my own patients as a provider now since 2019.
Awesome. Excellent. Can you tell us a little bit about what your philosophy is because I do think that as we work in this field and you find that it's so different and there's not this formulaic standard of care, that you can basically have your own identity, if you will, your own vision. And so what do you think that where have you come to in your journey in holistic and functional pediatrics as a cornerstone philosophy for working with parents?
Well, I definitely don't think that our bodies are a liability. And that's really the kind of foundation of where I start because I know for my own family, I had to learn how to take care of myself. I didn't grow up in a home where I knew how to take care of my health, where I knew, what quality sleep looked like, where I knew what quality nutrition looked like. And then as a parent, I was trying to learn those things. But at the same time, I was seeing it's really difficult for parents to do those things that our kids need and that we need. And I wasn't the only one struggling, but I kept seeing a system that instead of actually teaching that parent or that child, your body is beautiful, it has innate wisdom, the design of your body is incredible. And a lot of times when we're looking at symptoms and we're struggling or we're upset about them, we just really need to understand what they're trying to tell us. That it's not the symptoms that are bad, the symptoms are communicating something to us. And we just have to really understand and learn that. But I wasn't seeing that in the field of pediatrics. I was seeing a very fast, you know, almost like fast food type approach, and in and out assembly line. Everybody's really just getting a band-aid, a band-aid, a band-aid, a band-aid. And I'm thinking, how is it that I work in pediatrics and I don't even know how to do some of these things for my own kids? And really understanding we have to get back down to a very basic level of who we are as human beings. And we insure our health like we insure our car, and we view our bodies like we need to go to the mechanic and have a tune-up and an oil change, and we treat ourselves very mechanical. And so really my philosophy is not that I'm some sort of expert that parents are going to come to me and I'm going to help your child. No, because the child is the hero, the parent is the expert. I'm just going to walk alongside people and help you live again. What does it look like to connect with your family? What does it look like to eat nourishing foods? What does it look like to slow down and enjoy life, listening to your body, working with your body so that you can maximize your overall health and well-being? Because you start from yourself and then that branches out into your children and your family. And that's really my whole philosophy.
I love that. I love that. One of the things that I continually tell people is that our body is communicating to us. And
Yes,
and it is really easy to start to think about what is wrong with me instead of what is our body telling us. And
right,
as practitioners that believe that the cornerstone in working with people is educating them so that they can feel empowered to navigate what their body is telling them.
right,
I was just talking to someone this morning and I said, if you think about me as a human strategist, that I'm just going to have a different perspective on what your body is communicating and lay out some things that you get to decide, oh, this is how I want to do this, not as, this idea that we would go to the doctor, we're going to hear what's wrong and how to fix it with a short-term solution. And people that are parents, what they start internalizing is that their parenting is to be judged, and
right.
that the only way to be a better parent is to intervene and do these things that are fixable. And the problem that I'm seeing, and if anyone's been listening to what I've been talking about all year, is as functional health and functional medicine becomes more popular, how we're taking this functional idea, which is supposed to be personalized, education based, strategic, really rooted in empowerment, and the idea that that creates true medical freedom, and that what
Yeah.
we're doing instead is we're taking these philosophies and we're pushing it through this diagnostic model. And then what's happening is parents are believing that they're losing that idea that a child is resilient, and that what we really want to come back to, some cornerstones, is that we want to help build and protect a child's relationship with their health and their
Right.
bodies. We want to help people, parents, to help participate in building resilient humans. And
Yes.
that ultimately children should, even in a family that's holistic, even in a family that is pro optimization, is looking for something different, we're we're losing this idea that children should believe in their bodies, instead of believing that health comes from a bottle, because
Right.
now we've pushed this functional concept into this diagnostic model.
Right.
And um and and ultimately what you and I both want is that we want parents to understand that the goal is raising humans that know how to care for the body they were given. And
Absolutely.
coming back to that idea of like, what is the body trying to tell you?
Yes.
And how can we help parents feel empowered, and individuals of all ages feel like navigating that makes them feel that they're the hero of their own health journey. And
Absolutely.
I it's a big part of what Optim8 has always stood for, and we always want to have people that, you know every provider practitioner we have, they have their own educational wealth, their own experience, their own viewpoint, but
Yeah.
they're all from the perspective of those cornerstone pieces, and
Absolutely.
that's that you can be empowered in your own health journey. And
Yeah.
so,
100%. And I think that's a big difference between functional parenting and functional medicine, because we are giving parents power in a functional
yeah,
parenting model.
yeah,
Whereas the
yeah,
functional medicine model, it still gives medicine the power. We're still looking at the biochemistry of the body. We're still looking at supplements. We're still looking at like all of this external, what can we do? Let's look at the child through a magnifying glass. And in reality, that's really not how any other species functions. Ancient civilizations really understood this. The kids in our society are not just the future, they're also a mirror. They reflect things back to us. And so, when the first thing I typically will do when I start establishing a relationship with a new family, because as a pediatric provider, my patient is really the whole family unit. I'm not talking to a 5-year-old in a room by themselves. I'm talking to the parent. I'm talking to the child. I've got siblings a lot of times as well, and so I take care of that whole family unit. And I tell the parent, there is nothing wrong with your parenting. We just have a society that doesn't value and care for our physical bodies like it should. And for me, growing up and going, through traditional public school, you could only go to the bathroom at certain times. You could only, eat during lunchtime, and that was it. You couldn't have a water
yeah,
bottle at your desk. There were all of these things that they did to really disconnect you from those bodily signals. And then this idea that, we're kind of like a car, got to go in for our tune up, and you're poked and you're prodded, and blood's drawn, and you pee in a cup, and there's all these things that you're doing, and they have to check to see if you're healthy. And
yeah,
then, they go through this whole process, and then they tell you if you're healthy or not. And then there
right,
are
right,
times when you're struggling, you're like, I'm not feeling so good, and you go for help, and then the doctor says you're fine. And you're like, well,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
funny because I didn't feel fine. And so we just really don't know how to take care of our own bodies and how to listen to those
yeah,
signs as adults. And so then
yeah,
to try to fix a child, well, that child, a lot of times we don't really need to remove that child and then figure out what we need to do for them. We need to look at what are they reflecting back to us. And when we see a family unit, a lot of times the adults are adapting to an issue that is a problem for everyone in the house, but the child is the one that now their body is protesting. And so
Yeah.
for the little boy that's in school and recess is now only 10 minutes for sixth graders, when he comes inside,
Mhm.
his body needs physical movement. So we've now limited that, and
Mhm.
adults can adapt to that, but kids can't. So then he starts wiggling in his seat. Well, there's nothing wrong with him. He's reflecting that childhood was never meant to be sedentary. And so when we understand that the problem is not the parent, and to be honest, the problem isn't the child either. The problem is how we interact with our own body. And once we understand that, we can actually take this functional parenting approach back down to this very small family model. We can heal individual families, and those individual families will heal other families in their communities. Why? Because that's how we're designed. We're designed to be in connection. We're designed to be in community. We don't really all need an expert. We don't need an expert to go to each individual one of us. We really just need to kind of take that power back. And that's where the functional parenting piece comes in, because once we realize we have power, we make changes. The people around us see those changes. They want those changes too. We talk to them about what we're doing differently. They slow down too. And then all of a sudden, we see communities that are thriving instead of kids that just chronic illness is on the rise.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. To me, it's we keep as a culture everything, aside from this like medical model, as a culture, our identity is in consumerism and immediate gratification.
Right.
And we've turned parenting into that too, right? And this idea that there is a holistic viewpoint that we can help create for families and parenting. We Shazi and I want this idea of functional parenting, not just a functional pediatric department, right? Not just pediatrics that does functional health or functional medicine, but really helping create this new idea for parents that can think about raising our kids differently when all the messaging that's out there is consumerism and all the messaging that's out there is immediate gratification and forgetting the components that make up uh, what our health actually is, right? And so when you're talking about the family unit, I see this in my interaction with parents too. We might start with the appointment being for this particular issue, and then and I'll pivot it and go, well, can we talk about why that's happening and what this is really about for you, right? Right. Um, so yeah, let's get into, I would like to share with everyone that you've written this amazing philosophy into a book for parents to experience. I think it is an experience when you read it. I just love it. And I'll let you talk about, introduce it, and then I can share some things that I loved about my reading experience with it and how it ties into what we're doing here. So yeah,
Yes.
so tell us a little bit about what you've written.
Yes. So I actually was thinking about my philosophy, and I was preparing kind of educational content, because really before the pandemic, I would teach parents routines. I would talk to them about how to, institute a good sleep hygiene routine, and how to really help their kids if they were in a traditional school setting when they came home, to make sure that they were regulating themselves and grounding and maximizing their overall health, I would teach these little routines. But then the pandemic happened, and that kind of just almost put us all just in I don't know what you want to say. We just all kind of got twisted around, and to try to talk about routine now with people is very difficult. It's very
Yeah.
difficult for parents to try to
Yeah.
start a routine or start a protocol or something like that. And I realized for my own family, we left the metroplex. We moved a couple hours outside of the city after COVID, and we got some land and started a little organic farm, which was really fun. But we did that because everything was changing rapidly around us. And my youngest son was just about to start kindergarten. And I could not for the life of me like imagine him sitting and doing online school. I just couldn't. And so I said, okay, well, what can we do? And so we moved out, bought a little old farmhouse, got goats and chickens, and had a blast. But I learned so much through that process that really routines are developed through connection. We don't actually have to institute, well, I need to do this and I need to do that. And so then I started thinking, well, how do I teach this now? Because how I taught it before was completely different. And while it worked, it definitely helped us when I was working, seeing patients outside of the home, and my husband had a traditional office job, and my kids were in school. Those things helped. They did. They helped us to manage stress. They helped us when we got sick. They helped us to kind of support our immune system. But it was always like a band aid. It was never like we felt like we could breathe. And so when we moved and we started farming and we started a slower life, I realized that, oh, you don't actually institute them as routine. You slow down enough that you just start naturally connecting and doing those things. And so then I just started writing, and I love writing. I write a lot of poetry. And so what came from that was the book that I wrote called Cultivate, a Poetic Guide to Raising Whole Humans. And really, it's not a medical book, it's not a self help book. It really just is an invitation to slow down. And it takes you kind of through how did we end up here in the first place. It explains a little bit about, from birth until adulthood, what happens in our society, and then really what we can do to slow down and reclaim that for ourselves, bring that power back, bring time back, bring all of the things that we've complained we don't have, that we need to heal, bring them all back, take that power back for ourselves, for our own families. Because the reality is, the only follow-ups I really want to be doing with people are success stories to hear how their child is thriving. I don't really want a system where people have to keep going to doctors and hospitals and clinics because that's where their health comes from. Because that's not, I think at this point, Western medicine has been like 100, 200 years old, and we can see that we've only got sicker over time. We can
Mhm.
recognize we're paying a lot of money, but we're not buying health. And so
Yeah.
when we realize that, and we take that power back and we start living again, we realize, oh,
Mhm.
I really don't have to treat my body like it's a liability that's going to break down all the time if I just slow down and I live.
Yeah. Yeah. I love and for those of you that might not be readers, or for those of you that are thinking, because if you like listening to a podcast versus picking up a book, this is a very fast read, but it's lovely. And it is an invitation to maybe just shift your perspective. I mean, that's the first thing that needs to happen. If you're like, I'm curious about what this could look like, or I am interested in working with a practitioner who might even just think differently, because, I'm constantly talking to people about, like, we don't even really say my appointment with the doctor. We say it's the doctor's appointment. I have a doctor's appointment.
Right.
It's like it's not my appointment with a
Right.
doctor. It's
It's
I have a
doctor's
doctor's
appointment.
appointment.
Uh-huh. Well, it
and
feels that
already.
way.
All right. Well, yeah, we surrender our power
Correct.
because we're going to be in there and we're going to be told what's wrong and what to do, right?
Uh-huh.
We don't even think we're going in there to learn something or to talk to someone who might inspire us
Right.
or might help us change our perspective or might help us go, oh, wait a minute, like parents are supposed to model more than instruct, or maybe we're
Yes.
supposed to be preparing our kids, not just protecting them, or maybe we need to think about, oh, that building a healthy habit might be better than instilling a protocol, or the idea that we could empower rather than turn it all into pathology, you know.
Absolutely.
um we've talked about, and it's very hard as a business owner that your goal is people not to be dependent on you, right? Like
Yeah.
if you have to see me too many times, I haven't
Yeah.
done my job right. Like we want people to go, oh my gosh, you choose to come for something different, but the acuteness that is happening, we want people to be through that as fast as
Yes.
possible. And, like you said, I want my follow-ups to be, you know, I get so excited when that follow-up is,
Right.
I'm great. I'm out of this,
Yes.
I'm out of this crisis. And pivoting into just this richness in a conversation that you can have with parents about, well, I would like to work on this healthy habit with my
Yes.
family. What can that look like? I want to be inspired. I want strategies. I want insight.
Absolutely.
One of the things that I really love that you said is in your book, let's redefine the village, right? That idea that it takes a village to raise a child. You said, I wonder if we've misunderstood what a village really is. I love this. You said a village is not simply more people, a village is a network of intentional relationship. A
Yes.
village is not simply more people because sometimes people make only more noise, more obligations, more opinions, more expectations, more performance.
Yes.
I just love that, right? Like, can we create this place where we aren't just this critical place where we learn pathology over our kids' health and give up on that holistic, whole body, whole parenting approach.
Right.
So, yeah, like, can you speak a little bit to that? Because I just
Absolutely.
love that. It was one of I wrote down a few things I'll share with listeners that were just my favorite things in your philosophy, in your poetry.
Yes. Well, and so really for my family, what I witnessed, um, I had heard several years ago, somebody had told me every yes that you say is a no to something else. You might not realize it at the time, but we're one
Mm,
person. We only have so many minutes in the day, so we cannot do everything. But what happens is we stretch ourselves so thin that a lot of times we're missing on the most important things to us, to our kids, because we've said yes, 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 yes. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with having a larger community, but you have
yeah,
to understand what is community and what is not community. A person that's just in my life isn't community. If we have a reciprocal relationship and we come together for whatever purpose, that's community. Community is not a bunch of people in your life that you're just having to pour out and pour out and pour out, and you have nothing left for yourself. You have nothing left for your spouse. You have nothing left for your kids. And so, really, you start there. Those are the most important people to you, anyways. And
yeah,
so you
yeah,
start with that. And if you're feeling like those are the people that are burdening you, then really you have to take a step back and really look at what's going on, because those are your most important people. But a lot of
Mhm.
times we've given so much of ourselves that we just don't have left to give. And it's not that we don't want to, it's that there's just nothing left. And so when we start cutting all of the noise out and we start saying no, we do take a lot of our parenting power back, because then we have more time. We have more time for ourselves, for our partner, more time for our kids. And then we start to see a lot of support. My 11-year-old son, I would say, is like my biggest cheerleader slash therapist slash wisdom, whatever you want to call him. He's the one that, when it's been a busy day or a long day or I'm tired, he will always have something to say that just is nourishing to my soul. And I think about all of the moments that I would have missed out on if I still was working in a traditional job, if I still was living in a traditional, suburb and doing the things that we did before 2020. If I was still living that life where I was giving so much of myself away, I wouldn't have that. And that's more important to me than anything else. So we start there, and then we realize once we do that, we have a good foundation and understanding of how we want to build our community. And that's why what we're doing with Optim8 is beautiful, because we're not building, this is not a clinic, this is not another, doctor's office. What this is a movement. It's a movement for humans to come back to being more human again. It's a movement for parents to take back their power. It's a movement for kids
Yes,
to be the hero of their own story again.
yes,
That's what this
yes,
is. We're not creating another business, another job, another place to work, another place to
yes.
spend money. We're creating a movement. And when you realize, oh, this is my village, this is what I protect, then everything you build from that, from where you send your kids to school, to the providers that you go to when you need help with your health, to even the farmer's market and who you talk to, where you buy your bell peppers from, you realize that the people matter, and you can make intentional choices, and then you can actually build a real community. What we have right now is a lot of people and a lot of noise, and nobody knows how to connect.
Yeah, a lot of noise for sure, and a lot of obligations,
Yes.
and and it's we're still going to have people in our lives that we may be related to that are noise and our obligations.
Yes.
But if we think that the the discount of the idea of a village, because maybe we come from dysfunctional families, right?
Right.
This idea that, like, oh well, we can't have that because we don't live in small communities and my family is highly dysfunctional. But there are things that we can do to create that
Absolutely.
differently for ourselves. And like you said, we're creating a movement here because boy, oh boy, oh boy, like we want that cornerstone of that to be from within.
Mhm.
And even as I watch the supplement industry continue to explode, and the quality of what's happening is shifting, and what the contamination of functional medicine and what's happening there, it's like I want us to come back to, even if nothing else changes in your life as a parent, but just maybe shifting your perspective,
Mhm.
so that that's the first step of, oh wait a minute, maybe nourishment isn't just that I have to be able to afford grocery shopping at Whole Foods Market,
Right.
or I
Right.
have to add a supplement protocol to my kids that
Right.
looks like mine, right? Like maybe nourishment is, like you said, this connection you have with your children. Maybe it's about nutrient dense food, and how do we do that in a way that fits.
Right.
Maybe it's about helping parents develop their own philosophies about, people come in and they ask me, like, well, what does the meal plan look like? It's not the meal plan. It is, what is your nutritional philosophy
Yes.
that as a family you've
Yeah.
developed and you own, and
Yes. Yes.
you've developed healthy habits out of that, right?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
right?
But I think when we like pathologize normal humanity,
Yes.
then we think everything needs to be a treatment, and food's not
Right.
a treatment. Drinking and
Yes.
hydrating yourself is not a treatment. Sleeping is not a treatment. Play is not a treatment. That's just part of life and living. So we kind of just
Yeah.
had to take that back from the industry that stole it from us.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Exactly. So, yeah, because when we come from a culture of consumerism and immediate gratification, then when we're put in this position, we go, oh, that aligns with the culture that I'm a part of. And I
Yeah.
can't conceptualize anything different,
Yeah.
right? But I love that you said in your book, we should, it's not a perfectly managed life, but a life that no longer needed to be managed so tightly,
Yes.
right? I love that. Um, you know, and this one too, many of us have been taught to believe the most important thing our children need exists outside the home,
Yeah.
right? That, like, again, if this is all this, we've developed a culture around parenting that's tied into consumerism, then of course it's not going to be like sitting down next to my kid or
Correct.
sitting down across from a dinner table. It's going to be, did I pay enough money at this club? Did I get does my
Right.
kid have I paid for enough extracurricular activities? Have
Right.
I paid for enough expensive clothing, expensive shoes, expensive equipment? Have I paid for enough of the best school? Right. And we're consumerism, we're turning our parenting into that consumerism model. And I think a lot of it is just we have to just be able to just pause and be
Absolutely.
given, oh my God, the permission to think differently or a call to think differently because maybe
Right.
we don't even know that we should be thinking
Right.
differently. Oh, wait a minute. Like,
Right.
I've created a parenting philosophy around buying, I with newborns. Oh my goodness, you probably see this all the time, right? Like the fancier the equipment I bought, and
Yeah.
now we've added tech to it.
Yeah.
And oh my God, how much further can we get away from human touch?
Yeah. Well, and I remember after I had my first son, and our neighborhood did like a community garage sale. So I was selling all of this stuff, and then everybody's like, "Oh, you're not going to have a second baby?" And I'm like, "No, I just didn't use any of this. Like none of this was necessary. I didn't even use like the crib. There were so
Yeah,
many things that I'm like, I didn't use all of this. Like it was
yeah,
something that somebody said I needed. So
yeah.
I purchased it and they just sat there. But I mean, that's really how all of it is. I've known people that have told
Mhm.
me that they spent like $600 on supplements at their first like functional medicine appointment somewhere else.
Oh
And that
no.
they came home with like a whole cabinet full of supplements, and they said they may have taken them for a couple days and it was way too much and then they just quit. And it's like you said, we can't get our health from a bottle. We're not going to do that. And
Not,
everything
yeah.
outside the home, yes, those things help. It's like I talked about before. I had these routines that were helping. And I kind of feel like it's almost like a cell phone. Like if your cell phone's at like 2% battery and you try to open an app and you're trying to play a song or something, your phone's going to die. Like that's just what's going to happen. But if your battery's at like, 65%, you can open an app and you can play a song. But our bodies are the same way, and we run ourselves so ragged we're running around on 2%. And so
Yeah.
then what happens is we do have to like regiment our life, because the second, everything is expensive. The second we add on something else or we do something additional, then we're collapsing under the weight of pressure. We're getting sick. We're not able to function because we were at 2%. But when you really slow down and you realize what you need is not outside the home, what you need is within your body, within your home, within your child, you really start cultivating that and taking care of that, you raise
Mhm.
like battery percentage of your phone. So now you can open Spotify or your email or whatever you need to do.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
choices are now, and this goes for my whole family, our choices now are not as costly to us. So
Yeah.
my kids, if I had gone in 2019 and ate like a fast food hamburger, I probably would have been sick for several days. Like that was how strict I had to be,
Yeah.
for myself. My kids probably not so much. If they had ate maybe some food dye or something, they might have a reaction to it. But now, because we're in such a like more healthy place, if we're on a road trip and we have to eat a hamburger somewhere because that's just what we're eating and there's nothing else available, we feel fine. And I think that's crazy to me, because how regimented I was before with, we buy only organic and this is what we do, and this is how we live. I was having to force myself to live life regimented because I
Mhm.
wasn't just living life. I was
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
put it in that consumerism model. And then when I
Yeah.
realized this is not what living is supposed to look like, the squirrels don't behave like we do. They don't run around and
Yeah.
act crazy and stretch themselves so thin over, miles and miles, and then come back
Mhm.
say, "Oh, other squirrel, can you cut me open and figure out what's wrong? I don't feel well." They don't
Yeah.
do that, but we do that. And we have
Mhm.
to realize that we're just like every other mammal. We know what we need if we just slow down and we don't then
Mhm.
regiment our life so much. And then that makes it nicer because you don't have to feel like so much pressure. Oh, we're going to all get sick next week because I didn't have a chance to go to the store, and now I have to buy, groceries from this store and nothing is organic, and then you
Yeah.
just stress yourself out, and then you think, what am
Mhm.
I doing? How is this health? How did
Yeah.
somebody sell this to me as wellness?
Mhm.
You have
Yes.
a list
Yes.
on the
Right.
fridge that's
Yeah.
got 15 supplements. You've got, a grocery bill that's $1,000. You've got, this life where you're like, this is health, and I'm holding it up like, to this
Yeah.
breaking point almost. And
Yeah.
then,
Yeah.
that happens sometimes. And as you well know, I got sick in 2024, and I had to take control over my own health. I had raised these two very healthy boys, but then because I was doing it regimented instead of just living my life and modeling that for them, I got sick and I needed help. And so then, rebuilding from the ground up, you realize, oh, I have power. My body has power. I can listen to
Mhm.
my body. And when we
Yeah.
all do that, we realize we don't need to spend as much money. We don't need as many professionals. We
Mhm.
can then slow down. We don't have such a long list of to dos.
Yeah. If everything is external, right, then what we've tied it to is it becomes elitist. Like you said, how did I get sold this idea that this was health?
Right.
And I think that the again, when you've built a culture around consumerism and immediate gratification, then excess is all that you have available, right? I've tied in being a better parent to excess.
Right.
And, we see it with adults too, the biohacking that's going on, and people learning about add this, add this, add this, and we've lost intentionality.
Right.
And we've lost the pathway to, like, if if functional medicine is about excess, then it excludes a lot of people
Right.
that that have big families
Correct.
or want to do something and are afraid that the only way to do it is to put it in this bracket
Yeah.
of, you know, private education.
Right.
And the reality is that there are multiple ways of empowering health. And
Right.
there's multiple,
Correct.
sometimes someone comes in and goes, and I say to them, the first thing you absolutely have to do is drink water. And, you know, sometimes there's pushback. Somebody is like,
Right.
I am so, you don't understand. I am so broken. I am so sick that it
Right.
can't possibly be water. And
Right.
it's not minimizing someone's symptoms. It's helping to say, okay, yeah, I understand, but do you understand that we are more than 50% water?
Correct.
And if you don't drink enough water, you're actually not caring for half of your body,
Yeah.
right? Or what happens in sleep, and
Yes.
that if you don't sleep well, what you're doing not doing for your body.
Right.
And I think that's the idea, right? Again, it's just we're supposed to do it outside of ourselves, and we don't even understand that what 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 we're losing by looking at something simple and going, oh, that's not a solution.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's, I think there's that um phrase that if you hear hoof beats or something, you should expect that it's a horse and not a zebra. But I think a lot of times now, especially because you can Google symptoms and Amazon can be your doctor, you know, people are like, oh, I feel a little, you know, I have a headache, I feel a little run down, and they all of a sudden, you know, think they have a tumor. And it's like, no, you didn't drink any water today. But we
Mhm.
just jump to the, you know, the biggest thing. And that's something that I saw as a provider. I would have people that would come to me from other practices, and you know, they would be telling me, okay, well, this is what I've been doing. Okay, and is this helping? No. Okay, and so what's going on? And then we start talking and we get to the most simplest underlying cause for their child. And to
No,
the
right.
point that sometimes I've had moms, you know, they're like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe, like, what do you mean this was just constipation? And then, you know, in a couple
Yeah.
days, this issue that their child was struggling with for almost a year is
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
gone because
Yeah.
they didn't understand that, well, we don't need
Mm.
to jump to the most difficult thing to treat and just
Yeah. Yeah.
assume it's that and start working your child up for all of these
Yeah.
things. Like, we just
Yeah.
need to look at the basics of, well, this is humanity, and we, you know,
Hmm.
sleep and eat and pee and poop, and we look at these things, and a lot of times we find issues within those things, and until we've worked on those things, really we don't need $1,000 lab test. That's not going to be beneficial.
Yeah, and sometimes too, I find the really interesting thing about people that come from another functional practice, no one gave them the start and end point to what they were doing, right?
Correct.
It's like, okay, maybe you did need this supplement, but that was to replace an antibiotic. And once it was done, it wasn't a permanent part of the way
Correct.
you manage your life,
Right.
right? Because I also think what isn't being educated enough is that sometimes too much intervention is making the part of your own body that is supposed to be
Correct.
resilient actually
Correct.
very lazy,
Correct.
you know?
Yes.
Taking tinctures and essential oils on a daily basis so my kid doesn't come down with something might actually be working against a developing immune system
Right.
that needs to know, oh, there's no intervention here. I've got to do this, but also create where that product becomes just noise in the body and it doesn't even work therapeutically anymore.
Right. Right.
Like, there's a whole educational piece missing around what strategic intervention looks like too, right? Like,
Correct.
and the ability to have someone cut through the noise like yourself is so valuable
Yes.
because again, if functional medicine is like fast fooding pediatrics, oh, we're still going to fill, 8 exam rooms and we're still going to see people for 15 minutes. You're never going to have the time to ask the real questions to
Right.
figure out what really could be, going on. If the to sit down with someone and figure out that the anxiety they might have might be associated with an energy drink and chewing gum that they do,
Right.
right? Like, because also no one, again, if we streamline this, no one's going to take that time, right? To
Correct.
figure out things that are going on with
100%.
sleep and nourishment and human interaction and all that takes time,
Uh-huh.
takes a relationship between the
Absolutely.
parent and
Absolutely.
right, and
I
you and me and anyone else that embraces that.
I had a mom once. This was when I was a student, actually, but I was observing this interaction, and she was talking, and the provider had asked during a checkup about diet and are they eating well and well rounded and whatever. And the mom's answer was, actually, we just watched this documentary a few months ago, and so we've been trying to change things. And so then in my head, I'm thinking, what documentary? But the provider's like, oh, okay, great, great, great. And they kept talking. But then the mom started talking about some issues the child was having. So then the provider kind of went back to diet again. And then we'll come to find out the documentary they watched was like a animal rights type thing. So they were
Mhm.
vegan now. But what that meant was like the child was eating like Oreos because Oreos are vegan and other processed foods that were vegan.
Right.
And so the reality of the situation is like, this mom, I mean, nobody specified what
Yeah,
well-rounded meant. She was just asked
yeah,
a question. And
yeah,
I
yeah,
grew up in school and I can tell you nobody ever taught me nutrition. And even
yeah,
in nursing school, we learned a very like scientific
yeah,
regimented approach to eating that's not what our body needs. Like, yes, we were told, oh, well, this percentage of this and this percentage of that and this is bad for you and this is good for you, and but that changes. I mean, you think about cholesterol. I've seen kids being put on cholesterol because a long time ago parents were told cholesterol was bad for you. And so we have to understand that there's a huge gap of education. And for me, I don't do primary care anymore because I couldn't function in that model. I have rapid pattern
yeah,
recognition. So a lot of times parents could come to me and get an answer nobody else could give them in a
yeah,
short period of time. But then
yeah,
it still didn't give me enough time to get the education out that they needed. And
yeah,
to keep asking them to come back as a mom, like pay me more, pay me more. No, as a mom, I can't do that. I can't afford to
yeah,
just keep paying somebody.
yeah,
I
yeah,
need somebody that's going to take the time to sit down with me. And,
yeah,
for me, I don't the way I ended up in pediatrics, it's just I was in nursing school in my pediatric rotation. That's just what made sense to me, and that's just what I kept doing. But when I
yeah,
really look back on it, Laura, for me, I feel like there was a lot of my childhood that had I had education at school, or had the pediatrician done, more education, or,
yeah,
had I
yeah,
had a more functional home, there's a lot of information that I could have been a more empowered, healthy young adult. And I don't want
yeah,
to see the next generation go through that. And so we have to slow it down, and we have to bring it
yeah,
back to a actual connection and not just a rushed fast food approach. But when I got sick in 2024, even though I had been in the functional arena for a while, I still couldn't get better what I was doing. I was still trying to do everything regimented to heal. And I couldn't get back to where I was. And that's when I reached out to you. I know that, we had worked, as colleagues. I would send patients your way throughout the years, but I never obviously worked with you personally. And to work with you, Laura, I first of all, from the moment I made the appointment and I called and I spoke to Luke on the phone, I realized like I have such anxiety making appointments on the phone with medical offices because that fast, go, go, go approach. And when people on
Yeah.
the phone are just trying to get you off the phone, for me, I realized like that kind of shuts down my brain to where I can't even think of why I called in the first place. And I remember
Yeah.
calling Optim8 and Luke answered to take, the appointment down, and it was a completely different experience. I never felt rushed. I never felt like
Mm.
I needed to talk faster. I never felt like if I forgot, in the middle of a sentence, like my train of thought that, you were irritated with me. It really helped me to heal myself, to have connection with somebody who cared enough to slow things down for me. And that's
Yeah.
what I want to do for families,
Mm.
because
Yeah.
what I realized once I slowed down and I healed, there are a lot of things now that parenting is really easy that used to be much more challenging. And to
Yeah.
have that realization and to think, wow, I was teaching people for a long time really like parenting was a verb, and it really isn't. It's a noun, because once you understand just who you
Yeah.
are, you really don't have to go out of your way to help your kids. You are whole, they're
Yeah.
whole, because you're modeling that for them.
Yeah. Yeah. You said something briefly about what the intention of nursing and what Florence Nightingale said. And I was really touched by that. And if you would like to share with our listeners, because I think that brings what we're talking about full circle
Yes.
here, and what we're trying to do. And
Yes.
yeah,
Well,
because it's a beautiful thing.
yes, I always try to tell people, the difference between the field of medicine and the field of nursing, because they are two separate fields, even though nurses will work under that umbrella in medicine. And as a nurse practitioner, I can diagnose and treat, and I can prescribe medication, but the field of nursing has a completely different philosophy. And so Florence Nightingale, we consider her like the modern founder of nursing. And she long, long ago realized when she was taking care of soldiers that were wounded, back then, like as a handmaiden to the physician, really that's what nurses were, just helping with what she was told to do. But she started questioning things. She was very curious, and she wondered, okay, well, how come these soldiers that seem to have like less intensive wounds, how come they died and these other ones didn't? And so she just started questioning things, and then she actually was one of the first people to really start using statistics, because she started tracking everything, and she realized that a soldier in a clean bed was more likely to survive. A soldier near a window was more likely to survive. A soldier that they were making sure that he was eating and drinking was more likely to survive. And so then she realized, oh, the environment matters. And that was something medicine wasn't looking at all. They were just treating wounded soldiers. And so they weren't
Yeah.
understanding sepsis and infection and why they were dying. And she was curing these people that were just rapidly dying from their war wounds. So then she said, why in the world are we going to, continue just being handmaidens to the physician? Let's go out and be in public health. Let's educate, let's empower people, let's be holistic so that they know, like, life and health is not in a vacuum. And so she
Yeah.
theorized that if nursing moved out into the community, that by the year 2000, we'd have no hospitals, that it would just be acute care centers for injuries and things like that. Obviously, that didn't happen. There was no money for healthcare in nurses moving into the community, but
Yeah.
that's really what we are. I didn't go to school to study medicine, like an MD who is a medical doctor. I went to school to study nursing. So a lot of my classes were in normal health and development. I took lactation courses, I took, growth and development courses, health promotion courses, nutrition courses. I took those types of classes within nursing because the goal really of nursing is to have a healthy human, not manage
Yes.
disease.
I love that. I love that. So, yes, I mean, we invite you, if you're listening, to think about even parenting differently. We want you to think about this idea of functional parenting. We want you to think about health for your children completely differently. We want you to be inspired. And so we welcome you to, if you want to download uh, a complimentary PDF of Shazia's poetry, you can find it on the Optim8 Health and Wellness website in the online store. If you want to book an appointment with her, you can hit schedule and book an appointment with her. We are going to do a series of these podcast episodes. This is the first of a 4-part series we're doing. So we hope at the very least you will stay tuned for more great information about what we're doing here. And we invite you into this new movement that we are excited about, inspired about. And we hope that you will stay tuned. Stay tuned and join us again for another episode of Health Matters with Laura Kopec. Thank you, Shazia. I'm so proud of you. I'm so inspired by you, and I welcome you into the Optim8 family. And I cannot wait for parents to experience your wisdom and your inspiring education and empowerment for families.
Thank you so much, Laura. I'm really excited.